Welcome to another episode of Nancy and Nicole Real Life, Real Talk. The stories we tell ourselves. Today we're talking about force versus flow. How
Mhm.
how it affects us, how we show up, how we set goals, all the things.
Oh my god, I love this topic. I'm gonna s Can I show you one of my tattoos? I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
on my elbow or not elbow, forearm, there's a puzzle piece. Can you see that?
Yep.
It also has my mom's signature in it, but that's not the
Oh,
important
never
part.
knew that.
I know, it's her actual signature. I got that after she passed. But the reason why I love conversations about force and flow is and I'm not a jigsaw puzzle person, which is part
Okay.
of why I think it's funny that I have one and this story is so important. But maybe this is why I don't like jigsaw puzzles. But you know, when you're doing one and you have the piece and it looks like it goes there and
Hmm.
you go to put it there because it looks like it's the right shape, it looks like it's the right colors, and it doesn't just go plop
Yeah.
in and you're like, no, but I'm sure it's the right thing. And you kind of can, if you are like me, mangle the shit out of that piece, trying
Yeah.
to force it to go in because it just looks like and feels like it should go in. What
Yes.
that feels like in life, I think that's into the force category. But we all know, most of us, in doing a jigsaw puzzle, when it is the right piece in the right place and that effortlessness of flow where it just
Yes.
like that, which is why it's a tattoo on my arm. That is what I'm trying to feel all the moments in my life of personal everything versus work, health, spirituality, everything
Hmm.
is am I trying to force that puzzle piece or is there some flow and perfectness to it being the right thing? And I can tell you that I do not always recognize the force moment in the moment. But it's so obvious when you do it. Like, again, when you're sitting there doing a puzzle, it is so obvious to everybody else sitting around doing the puzzle with you. That doesn't fit there, Nancy. Like, stop screwing up the puzzle.
I know. But in the moment, you're like, but it'd be so much easier if it just did fit, because then I could
I,
move on to something else, and then you get stuck in spiral.
yeah. So I love that topic because I think it is so, again, stories we tell ourselves about the force piece is that part of it is just believing that we have to you gotta make shit happen. If it's gonna happen, you gotta make stuff happen.
Hmm.
Wait, did you get that kind of messaging? I think that feels way more like my dad than my mom.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's as with everything we talk about in this podcast, there's a balance of, I'm into energy and I actually do have meditations, guided visualizations I do that manifest clients like magic. But here's the thing, I still have to get off my little meditation cushion and go interact with the world. So there is an element of you got to do some stuff.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm just going to sit here and think about this amazing life and stay in my PJs for the rest of it, and it just
Yeah.
shows up. So where's the balance of, yeah, we're just gonna force it and, I always yeah, like military, my dad was military, right? So that's just that military, like, we're just gonna grind it out and, tough it out versus, okay, let's get a little flow in here. And there's
Yeah.
effort involved and sometimes there's sticky parts, but I believe there's a whole lot more flow available to us with really amazing results. It doesn't mean you have to settle for less or any of those other things.
I mean, just to be clear,
Yeah.
going back to the puzzle, like flow doesn't mean like you still have to be sitting at the table with the
Yeah.
puzzle. You still have to be picking up pieces, and it's
Right.
a ton of trial and error,
Right.
but it is recognizing when something is there is ease
Right.
and meant to beeness and allowing as opposed to trying to make something fit that doesn't fit. So just to recognize, like you still have to be doing the do.
What are the areas of your life that this kind of shows up the most?
Right. It shows up in super day-to-day stuff. Like am I getting up and going to the office, coming in here to this space, which I have a fabulous space here, or am I working from home in my pajamas like that sometimes?
Mhm.
I can force some energy about either of those, and that is not very helpful. Uh, Usually around moving my body and exercise, I
Mhm.
tend to get kind of which is sort of ironic because I've I've not been particularly regimented about that for a while in my life, but in general, I tend to get super rigid, and sometimes I end up hurting myself because I get super rigid into the force rather than the flow and listening to my body. So there's that. It definitely happens with work in all the ways that, I mean, sometimes it's about trying to work with a client that really
Mhm.
we are not each other's puzzle pieces, or a transaction that is like you were just trying to force something, or a negotiation all the time. I mean, all of those places and relationships in general where I'm trying to insert a quality of connection
Mhm.
that isn't there for
Right.
whatever reason. So it's again, that's part of why I got so excited in talking about this, because it just feels like it is in every corner of my life, and
Mhm.
the self talk of that force voice tends to not be the most loving, compassionate self talk.
Right. Now it's
It's
usually
it is pretty judgy. Yeah. What's so? How about for you? Where does it show up for you?
yeah, kind of the same, pretty much everywhere. It shows up in I mean, certainly in business, it shows up, we've talked about this. I think anytime you are in, a self-employment 1099 kind of scenario, meaning you're making your own things, I mean, that is the perfect thing with real estate. The only thing I know this year is that it's gonna look different than last year, and the other 29 years that, this is my 30th year, they all look different. The price point ends up being a little bit different. Obviously, the clients are different. The months that there are patterns for sure, but it's all different. Sometimes I sell a lot of houses in January, sometimes I sell none. And same with every other month of the year. So if I'm trying to force my business, that's why we talked about it on our business planning episode. I really don't go very deep in a business plan because that puts me in force mode. It has to be this type of transaction at this time. And I'm just trying to force something that you really can't. I know if I do certain actions, the business will show up. All of the things will happen. The end result is going to be fine. It's
Yeah.
usually way more than fine, but trying to force exactly, you cannot predict in real estate. I'm going to sell a house on Tuesday the 22nd and it is going to close on Friday the what it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But you just showing up and doing your things. And even it was beautiful. We had such a beautiful moment over the holidays with the boys and our family of, I'm always trying to create these special moments. And sometimes I'm forcing them and they're like everybody shows up because mom said to be there, but it's pretty clear we're all there under duress, sometimes included. And this holiday, it ended up being different. I realized, I wanted to have Christmas Eve. We go to my husband's house in the evening. There's always a lot of food. Most of it's food I don't eat. Just
Your husband's family, just to be clear, you and your husband have the same house. Just to clear that.
yeah, yeah. My
Well,
husband's
yeah,
yeah. Our house is the same.
in-laws, yeah.
We go to my husband's family. I love the people. I don't always love the menu. So I wanted to have my own food. I was like, I want to have a meal, which then morphed into me making homemade bolognese, but the day before. And then the boys and I made homemade pasta. And we just had the most fun. And it was definitely a flow versus force moment. I could have forced a special experience. I could have forced, trying to figure out this meal thing, but it just ended up being the most fun. We made pasta together and we laughed and our hands are all covered in dough and then we're rolling it out and cooking them. And it was one of those beautiful flow moments that created what I wanted better than any engineered, let's go
Yeah.
here, be ready by this time, wear this outfit kind of experience. So it was a great memory and hopefully one we'll keep doing because it was great.
I love that. Yeah. It is really a shift in being present. Like, and one of the things that popped in as you were saying that for me is thinking about the seasons of our lives as well. Like, not just the difference of this year is going to be different than last year and how we measure that, but like and how our identity evolves. So, for those of you who know me, this probably is not a big surprise that I mostly would have most of my life identified myself as pretty big extrovert, very social, out in the world, love all of that. And I am in a place right now where none of that really feels all that appealing to me. My time with other people versus time alone is so in a different balance than it's ever been. So, those of you who are used to seeing me and haven't heard from me, please don't take it personally. I just am in a season of quiet and alone time. And there are periods, especially I sort of started feeling that shift where I was like, "Oh God, what's wrong with me?" Or am I depressed? Or God, maybe really vitamin D lack, from winter in Seattle is really catching up to me finally after living here all my life. I was sort of pathologizing this difference, like what's wrong with me, as opposed to and sort of trying to force some of that, like, okay, I still feel like I need to be old Nancy.
Mhm,
And I don't feel that way now. Like, I don't feel like something's wrong with me. I also don't assume that this is probably going to be how I am for the rest of my life. That seems highly unlikely. Because I do think some of that is just naturally who I am. But it has been interesting to sort of go with that flow and how that has challenged my identity
mhm,
and giving myself permission and kind of courage to explore whatever this piece, this chapter, season is for me,
mhm,
and being okay with that looking and feeling differently. I think that's easier to do when it's an well, I don't actually think that. I was going to cut myself in the middle. I was going to say I think that's easier to do when it's an internal process, but actually I don't think that's true because sometimes that internal stuff is so hard. But I do think when it bumps up against what other people expect of you,
mhm,
sometimes that can be hard, and it's easier when there's some definition and expectations to stay in the force, or I try and force other people to be more of who I expect them to be based on who they've been in the past, like, "Don't change in our relationship, how dare you?"
right. Yeah, isn't that true?
As opposed to just allowing other people to be in whatever season they're in. It's
Yeah.
hard when people change. I don't know why it feels so mostly liberating. The beginning part of change is hard. When you finally get comfortable with it, it just feels so liberating and wonderful. And my God, what was I so resistant about? But it's way harder to have that same ease and permission giving when other people are changing,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. No, it's totally well, because it alters how you interact with them, and it usually means there's a change in boundaries and gets all kinds of funky and
And
stuff.
it triggered I mean, some I can get a little insecure in some of my friendships, and if I don't hear from people or I don't feel like we're connecting in a way that is more typical for us, it's really easy for me to, "Oh my like, do they not like me anymore? Did I do something wrong? Have I hurt their feelings?" Y Where do we tell ourselves? Imagine that
Well,
come to oh my god. Ugh. So what is, so when I'm just curious, so in that shift from force to flow, like, what do you think happens in the human experience that helps us shift from sort of feeling that rigidity to being okay with doing something different? Whether it's sort of relational or business or I mean, I think
mm,
I'm gonna guess it's a very similar pivot regardless of what
mhm.
sort of facet of your life you're in.
I'd say, at least for me personally, it is having the courage to set my own goals
Ah.
or create my own definitions of things. I remember years ago when my dad moved to Idaho, I thought that I, to be the good daughter, was supposed to buy a home there. It was on my goals for forever. And I kept trying to force it, and it never went anywhere
Interesting.
because I ultimately realized I was doing it. I was trying to force something that I thought I was supposed to do to be the good daughter.
Mm,
And it never did happen. But conversely, there are other things that when I set the goal to do them, they just manifest because I'm more in flow with it is something that I truly want. For me, the force versus flow is more of an alignment thing. If I am
mm,
forcing something, there's a sneeze in there somewhere. Excuse me.
yes,
Here we go.
bless you.
Bless you, my child. So force usually is around lack of alignment. And the lack of alignment could be what it is I'm trying to do specifically, be part of a relationship or achieve something in my business or do something for my own health. If I'm doing it because I think I'm supposed to, or I will earn somebody else's approval, that is force. And I hardly ever get there. And if I do, whatever it took to get there was not worth it.
Yeah. Mm, yeah.
So that is my definition of force versus flow. And the force can also be the how, right? Like, how I get somewhere. There's an easy road. There's climb uphill. It needs to be worthwhile. I need to really struggle to get there, or I could just kind of go with the flow and still get there, but it could be a whole lot easier. I don't necessarily have to have all the struggle and strife that I think I need to in order to be worthy of that goal. So,
Mm,
an alignment thing.
I love that. Well, and I think so. The word for me around the that there's a quality of rigidity.
Mm-hmm.
And rigidity in my life sometimes is what I'm trying to control. Okay, it's always about control, overly control. And some of that is like not allowing any sort of flexibility from that. And what that means, I think, for my life is when I'm in that space and energy, and I totally agree it's out of alignment, is there's no space for synchronicity or magic or surprises.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if everything is always scheduled out, where's there room in your psychic space, in your calendar, in your whatever, to have something just surprise you? So I think that when can give yourself a little bit more openness
Mm-hmm.
in that planning a well-intentioned life, because you do have to have attention alignment about how you want to move through the world and who you are and what's important to you, and giving yourself a little bit of flexibility about that is important. Otherwise it can feel very stale and predictive and not very much fun. I think sometimes that's what happens sort of as people get into sort of that midlife. And I talk about midlife sort of as in a very broad, like 45 to 65. And sure, it manifests itself different at 45 than at 65, but there's some recurring themes. And some of that is, again, when you were sort of in that rigid, controlling, living from these definitions and identities that may not still feel very true to who you are,
Mm-hmm.
because either your world and your life has evolved, or you have evolved and grown and changed and they're out of sync with one another. Um, then I think that can either hinder or support staying in the more of a flow state of allowing.
Yeah. I think it's easy to get busy just checking boxes.
Mm,
Check boxes to say you did. One of the things we were talking about before this episode is, I always say my two favorite love languages are shoes and plane tickets. I love them both dearly. And usually I start a year with upwards of half a dozen trips already on the books at various times of the year. It makes me happy. I love the planning. I love the buying of the tickets. And I open my little ticket app and I just get to see everything. I'm like, look at all these fun places I'm going. I have one trip on the books right now, and that's it. And this big, wide open space. And I could force things right now. I could get in the checking the box mode of I love to travel. So let's get it all on the calendar. But the flow part of me right now knows that that's not the right thing to do. I'm just not there. I would be forcing it. That's the only way I know how to describe it. I would be checking a box. I would be
mm,
filling dates on the calendar because I feel like I'm supposed to. And that's typically how I start the year. And the key is I can't even really tell you why. I can't tell you why I don't have all these trips booked. I can't tell you if I'm going to go on all the trips or not. I just know that the flow part of me knows that now is not the right time to book them.
interesting.
And anything else would be forcing.
Yeah.
And I mean, the trips would be bad or I wouldn't, I don't know. I just know that I'm meant to have that open space right now. And I'm meant to lean into the flow to see what fills that space, and maybe travel, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. What's your comfort level with, because that's pretty different for you. I know how you feel about
So
travel.
yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I
is
mean,
that uncomfortable?
surprisingly, no, and that's the interesting part. I think because I am honoring the flow. Like, I'm
Interesting.
really like, this is how it's supposed to be right now. I'm curious about it. I think it's really interesting. And we actually have a travel calendar in our house where you can't I see it every single day because, we do trips. My husband and I, we do trips together, separate. There's kids' sports schedules. It
Sure.
just got to be that it's easier to have it on one big thing. So all of a sudden we're not like, wait, everybody's out of town at the same time. Who's taking care of the dogs? We don't know. Um, so there's lots of reasons we have this big so I look at this calendar every day and I look at this white space and I check in with myself. Is today? No, today's not the day.
Interesting.
So it
Yeah.
feels good right now because I'm honoring the flow and
Yeah.
I'm okay with letting it be different. I'm okay with not knowing why and I'm okay with not knowing the answer. But I think I know the reason I'm okay with that is because I've gotten to the point where I do trust my intuition and I just know this is the way
Yeah.
it's supposed to be right now.
Yeah. Interesting. Given some of the other conversations we've had, I just was thinking about that level of planning and being okay with it or
Mhm.
not. One of the things that a lot of people do at different times of the year is around budgeting and planning and that kind of stuff. And I was just thinking about how, and this may not quite line up now that I'm saying it as much as it did in my head 30 seconds ago, but I'm going to share it anyway, and maybe it'll resonate for somebody listening, which is about sort of around budgeting.
Mhm.
And if you are shooting yourself into some very forced, rigid financial goals, as opposed to making decisions that feel not flow like loosey goosey, like yesterday I said I was going to try and save money, and today I'm like, the hell with it. I'm going to go buy a hot tub. So it's not necessarily that, but it is like, what are the guiding principles? Because there's still guiding principles in that flow state. I don't think it's complete loosey goosey, whatever goes is fine, because I think it's tied to alignment, which I think is tied to our primary core values. So if
Mhm.
you don't know, it does make sense. I'm connecting the dots. If you don't know what those core values are,
Mhm.
which is a lot of people don't, or they're
Mhm.
kind of loose, like whatever, but like really specific, like top 5. And if you don't know how to sort of get yourself there, you should reach out, and Nicole and I can both help you with that. But if you've got those core values and you're painting the picture of this intentional life to
Mhm.
support those, so that really everything you're doing on a daily basis should be an expression of those values, there's some sweet openness of how that gets interpreted, which
Right.
I would say puts you more in alignment and in a flow state, as opposed to, I think, if you are just trying to should yourself into, this is what I think my life should look like, it's devoid of being grounded and rooted in core values and is much more about I mean, all sorts of stuff, scarcity mindset, fear, like, again, lots of constricted, rigid thinking. Then it feels so out of whack and out of alignment because it doesn't tap into something deeper and more true for you,
Mhm.
a more authentic place. And then all of that planning feels rigid and kind of crappy, and flow feels woo, way too loosey goosey.
Right.
Like there's no guardrails there. But I think if I might have lost that train of thought a little bit somewhere in there,
No,
but
here's what came up as you were saying that.
I was gonna say,
Um,
"Nicole, bring it home for us." What the hell was I just
let's see.
saying? We're gonna practice your active listening skill.
Listening skills. This is what I heard you say. It's about having a container
Mm,
that you're functioning from. I was listening to something this morning and the gal was talking about fire as a perfect example. Fire without a container,
mm,
disaster, right?
mm,
Forest fire, all that kind of stuff. Fire in a fire pit keeps you warm, cooks your food. It needs a container. So my container right now relative to my travel is I am in a very creative phase of life, with some of the training and mentoring that I'm doing, and there's lots of creativity there. And that's the container that I want for my energy. And so travel, if it feels like it fits in that creativity or
Mm,
connection container, right? I'm doing something with my boys or what have you, then it's the right thing. But if my container is creativity, if I'm scattering my energy just by traveling all over the place just to say I did, it doesn't fit. It doesn't go within the
mhm,
container. Another thing that we were talking about for me, I loved, and I was talking about it in one of the other podcasts, is, we have our financial spending cycles that we go through throughout the year based on sports schedules and things like that. One of our main goals right now is to put more money away for retirement and all of those other things. I can make more money, or my husband and I can both make more money to put that in there, or we could just be more thoughtful
mm,
around how are we spending some of our current dollars. So it's again, a both and. Both, we could make more money and add to it. That's part of the goal. And we could just be more thoughtful. And we had talked about the whole, getting a coffee at Starbucks. There's some days, and it's okay for it to be different. And this is where you also have to be a little bit gentle with yourself, because some days me getting a coffee is really not where I want to spend my money. I'd actually rather put that money into retirement. And then there's other days where that actually does feed my soul and it just makes me feel good. And so I do want to get the coffee. And yes, some days I get the coffee and at the end of it, I'm like, "Nah, I probably could have." It's just it's being willing to be open and have that dialogue with myself. It's not about
mm,
it's not about getting it right all the time. It's just about being aware and then taking that information to fuel later decisions.
yeah.
Does that help a little bit or bring
Yeah.
it
I mean,
sort of?
I think
We're coming at it.
yeah, it's it's one of the things I'm loving about, uh, doing these podcasts, and I'm just and because I think there are podcasts that are super scripted where
Right.
people, I mean, actually, there's some where literally people are like reading their script off
Yeah.
of the computer monitor thing. And you and I obviously do a little bit of talking before we hit the record button, but I do appreciate our willingness to not have all of the completely formulated thoughts planned out all ahead of time, because I think there is some magic that happens just like when any of us are with our friends and we're having some meaningful conversation, that there's flow and exchange, and it's the sort of organic livelihood of thoughts coming to mind in the moment that aren't all super planned out and scripted. And I hope that that is what some of what appeals to people in following us and listening to our conversations, is that it feels very organic and like a real conversation and not like a prepared talk that we gave. I can do that if I
Good.
have to. I can have those kind of thoughts in my head. I love, and that you and I are super different and we sort of come at stuff from a different angle. And I find that part of what I love about our friendship is I grow and learn from you all the time. Like what you said in one of the other podcasts, I think, about hope versus trust. I was like, that just was a mind blower for me of
Yeah.
thinking about hope in a different way.
And
Anyway,
that's why we started the podcast, because of our conversations. And our conversations are not scripted. It's
yeah.
us sharing things. And for both of us, you say things sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's what I needed to hear today. Or that's the reframe that I couldn't get to on my own. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
that's why we started this podcast.
Well, and sometimes we start here and we end up here, and it's a little tangential along the way. But again, that's sort of how conversations go with people. So
It's
that's
life.
just I think that's what we're gonna keep doing, isn't it?
I think so. That's the plan.
All right. Well, for those of you listening, we hope you love the organic unfolding of real conversations in real time, because that's kind of what we're about: real life, real talk. And so thank you for joining us. And again, like, subscribe, share, comment,
Leave
send
a
it to a
review.
leave a review, all the things. I always thought that if you wanted to just listen to a podcast, you would go to Spotify. And if you wanted to watch the video, you would go to YouTube. But did you know that there's a little button you can click in Spotify and it'll show the video?
I've heard that rumor.
I
So,
did not
yeah.
know that till the other day.
Yeah.
So, wherever you watch us or listen to us, know that we're really appreciative that you are here with us, and we'll see you on the flip side. Thanks so
Bye.
much. Bye.